To try and introduce this movie would be near impossible, and intros are already so hard to begin with because I have to wrap you in within 20 to 30 seconds, when in reality I just need people to hear about this movie and its impact. Not only is it the most important Korean film ever made, it's one of the most important films made in the last 25 years. So today I'm going to try a few ways to pull you in. That was the first one. Did you know that the movie Oldboy was almost never made? And while you think about that terrible reality we could be living in if that happened, or amazing depending on how much that film messed you up, you have the movie I will be discussing today, to thank for it. I could call this video the most important Korean film ever, the most impactful, the most influential, the most groundbreaking, and all of it would be true. So, I haven't decided on a title yet. I guess you know what the title of this video is before I do right now. That's pretty cool, right? This film not only changed the entire landscape of South Korean film, but it changed the country itself, showing that movies can be more than just movies, and a spark for change. And a spark for change. And a spark for change. And its prophetic messaging about the division of people is now more prevalent than ever as our world has become even more divided. So let's talk about the most influential Korean film ever made. Alright, did I get you hooked? I'm sorry, but when you clicked on this video, you knew I was gonna yap. But I promise you, it's worth it. So a few weeks ago, I got a chance to see a 25th anniversary screening of Joint Security Area, a Korean mystery drama directed by the legendary Park Chan-wook, and from the second this film started, I was absolutely blown away. And a little creeped out at how relevant it is 25 years later, but we're gonna get into that. Released in the year 2000, this film came right at the start of this new wave of South Korean cinema and was one of the most crucial pieces in establishing the modern South Korean film industry, changing its course into what is now one of the most recognized, influential, and beloved sectors of film of all time. And by seeing this movie for the first time after watching a majority of its predecessors, it made me view it in a whole different lens. I could actually see in real time how it influenced some of the greatest South Korean films and directors that we know today. And after the movie was over, the theater I went to held a lecture about Korean history and the history of this movie, which uncovered even more importance of how this film changed the trajectory of its director and impacted the country as a whole, proving the powers that movies can really have. So today I want to talk about what I consider as the most important Korean film of all time, Joint Security Area. And hopefully I convince you to watch it too if you haven't already. Make sure to like and subscribe, and yeah, let's not waste any more time. Before Parasite captured the world at large in 2019, I think the majority of people's introduction and knowledge of South Korean cinema started and possibly ended with the 2003 cult classic Oldboy. Obviously, Korean cinema has been around as long as movies have been made, but the vast majority of South Korean film history is contained to the last 25 years. Of course, due to the fact that it's a very new country. And I mean contained in the sense of conversation, how it's studied, and how much the rest of the world has engaged with it. But you do have the very influential era of 50s to 70s Korean film, led by directors like Kim Ki-young, director of The Housemaid, which I haven't seen, but it's a film I've seen a lot of people refer back to as kind of the beginning of South Korean cinema. But during this time, there were a lot of restrictions and a lot of movies were censored from the public. This is of course not too long after South Korea gained independence, and the division of South and North Korea post-World War II came into effect along the 38th parallel in 1948, which coincidentally is the basis of the story of Joint Security Area. But again, more on that in a second. So while this new country is being established, so is their film industry, fighting through a lot of censorship and obstacles along the way. So by the 1990s, when more creative freedom is allowed, more resources are available, and the country at large begins to thrive, we begin to see a big shift in South Korean film. During the late 90s to early 2000s, we see a heavy emphasis on experimentation, whether that be the storytelling, filming techniques, or the editing. It was very new and very fresh, and directors were really trying everything. There were also a lot of extremely heavy themes. The humor was dark, the drama was twisted, and there was so much genre blending that you could get a psychological thriller and a passionate romance all in one film. There weren't that many restrictions, just pure creativity. And what spawned from this is what I referred to in my Save the Green Planet video as the big three of Korean film at the turn of the century: Bong Joon-ho, Jang Joon-hwan, and Park Chan-wook. Now I have to mention that I have made individual videos on both Bong Joon-ho and Jang Joon-hwan and their start in this new era. Shameless plug, I know. But there's a lot of background and context that I think would add a lot to what I'm going into today. I didn't realize it, but I've kind of accidentally made an unofficial trilogy series. The Save the Green Planet video focuses mainly on how that director and film were forgotten about, but also how it was very influential to South Korean cinema, including the influence it had on the other two big directors. And then the Memories of Murder video is about how that film made an impact on the country, from the communities all the way to the police departments. But what both have in common, and a lot of Korean movies share, is the messaging. In general, they are some of the most powerful films that have a genuine impact on the country at large. And you don't really say that often about other countries' movies. Most Korean films I have seen, even if it's just the backdrop to the story, focus so much on the politics and social climate of South and North Korea. They have these really nuanced takes on capitalism, communism, socialism. They critique their government, they make you see different perspectives on social issues. They have powerful messages that resonate with everyone, and during this era, made South Koreans look at their country differently, sparking change and ushering in new progressive ideas. This gets you something like Save the Green Planet, which critiques the health and insurance industries, but also critiques what we would now refer to as incels or societal outcasts. It's not just about how people are treated, but a conversation about how they respond. Memories of Murder critiques the government, the police, and the CIA, and how they handled their first serial killer. And then we go all the way to now, where we have Squid Game, which is a new take on the Eat the Rich movement, critiquing the rich capitalist. But all these movies and shows that we've come to know and love had to start somewhere, and that's where we get Joint Security Area. As if this video and everything I discussed couldn't be more beautifully connected, we have to start with a look at the cast. This movie stars Lee Byung-hun, who is most recognized for his portrayal as the frontman in Squid Game, Shin Ha-kyun, who is the lead in the most underrated South Korean film of all time, Save the Green Planet, Lee Young-ae, who went on to work with Park Chan-wook in Lady Vengeance and starred as Inspector Koo, and then the greatest Korean actor and my personal favorite, Song Kang-ho, which I'm sure you know who that is. And then we have the legendary director himself, Park Chan-wook. So before this, his first two movies, Trio and The Moon is the Sun's Dream, were pretty bad, at least from the public's perception of them. Not only were they huge losses of profit, I'm sure you've never heard of them because they got really bad reviews and have gone relatively unseen. They did so poorly that one, he wishes they never came out and his career started with Joint Security Area, but two, if this third film didn't do well, he was ready to quit directing altogether. There was a lot riding on this movie, and this was his last chance at being taken seriously as a director. So, what does he do? Well, he makes the most controversial, yet beautiful movie he could possibly make. The film is about soldiers stationed along the 38th parallel that divides North and South Korea. Without doing a history lesson, because I'm sure you already know, this is one of, if not the most dangerous and volatile places in the entire world. One small move, and practically a whole war breaks out between the two countries. And in this film, more than just a small move happens. We start the movie with the night of the incident where Sergeant Lee Soo-hyuk, a South Korean soldier played by Lee Byung-hun, is kidnapped by North Korean soldiers and he has to fight for his life to make it back, causing 2 deaths in the process. All-out gunfire from both sides proceeds afterwards, and a full-scale investigation is launched to find out what happened, why it happened, and to try and calm tensions before anything worse happens. We then work backwards from this in a very Pulp Fiction style order of events to see that the truth was actually a lot more complicated. Without giving away too much, Sergeant Lee had befriended 2 of the North Korean soldiers posted opposite of him, as they both have the night shift guarding their respective countries' sides. Lee had a friend who was also in the army with him. It was his situationship's brother, and as they were working the same shift, he slowly became involved in this forbidden friendship as well. And we see over the course of the film them becoming really close. It's really just bros being bros. Now, intercut with these flashbacks are scenes from the present-day investigation as we see how much misinformation was spread involving the case itself, the lives of the involved players, and just general political talk. So much of the beliefs each side has are based on lies and trying to portray a certain image, directly commenting on the political state of each of these countries. Whether it be fear-mongering or propaganda, so much could be solved if people just didn't lie. And this film dives deeper into this dynamic and historical relationship with the conversations that these four friends have. They don't necessarily know why they are fighting or if they even truly believe in this tension, they just know that they each side with a different political party and they're supposed to be against each other. In this very day-in-the-life, fly-on-the-wall perspective of their bond and their conversations, is really just the conversations happening in the real world. They talk about everything from their governments, the military, what music they like, what they want to know about each other's countries, and what food they want to try. Except, these conversations can't really happen, at least with opposing members of North and South Korea. The film is a mix of Romeo and Juliet, a standard detective story, a murder mystery, and a hangout movie, and it all blends together so well into a heartbreaking, beautiful bromance story. It's one of those cases where there is so much messaging, so much strong and prevalent messaging, that it boils itself down into something so simple. Now, of course, this is not the reality North and South Koreans live in, especially at the time of this film. But it was a huge step in the right direction, not just for the communities, but the opposing governments. This is when a film can go beyond just being a film. After the movie was released, of course it was met with some backlash. It is extremely controversial. I mean, it is one of the first and one of the only physical pieces of media that people can see North and South Koreans breaking bread together. But when people finally saw it and saw how masterfully crafted it was, it became a certified smash hit. In the year 2000, it was the highest grossing movie for that year with 2.5 million admissions in the city of Seoul alone and almost 6 million viewers worldwide. And at this point in time, it was the highest grossing Korean film ever. And of course it went on to win all the major awards for Korean film. But remember, its impact goes beyond just sales. And the year this movie was released was a pretty important one for the country too. Ever since the 1970s, North and South Korea had held diplomatic conversations to try and ease tension. But in 2000, the president of South Korea, Kim Dae-jung, was the first South Korean president to actually visit North Korea since their separation in 1948. But this movie was trying to accomplish exactly what the governments were trying to accomplish: unity, understanding, and peace. Then in 2007, during the Inter-Korean Summit, the next standing president of South Korea, Roh Moo-hyun, gave a copy of this film to North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. Because apparently he felt like its message was so powerful and this was the direction that these countries needed to go towards. Now again, we are getting into some tricky territory as we discuss the North Korean government, but just this interaction alone speaks volumes to the power of this film and the power of film in general. Maybe you've heard about how Kim Jong-il was quite the cinephile, and Roh Moo-hyun thought this would be the perfect way to get his message across. I mean, this movie was quite literally used as an attempt at a peace treaty between one of the most divided political relationships in history. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any other movie that has done something like that. Now, of course, we know as time went on, things have changed. And all across the world, we seem to be more divided than ever. Man, this is such a tricky and scary territory for me to get into on this channel, so I'm really trying to walk the line carefully. I just think we could all take a page out of this book. You know, this movie makes you think, it makes you uncomfortable, and that's its purpose. And the way it does so just so happens to be beautiful and thought-provoking. And with the way things are today, I feel like this movie could be even more relevant 25 years later. Even though, yes, I know the situation in North and South Korea is very complex and this is just a movie, but its message is definitely very needed right now. But before we dive even deeper into the most dangerous territory I could put myself in on this channel, let's talk about people who did take a page out of this book. Alright, so instead of getting into politics, let's talk about movie making. But as I'm sure you've noticed throughout this entire video, a lot of people felt the same way I did about this film in South Korea. So for one, this movie is a checkpoint in the history of Korean cinema, perfectly placed at the turn of the century, acting as the starting point for the modern era. If you just Google most popular Korean movies, all 100 of the top 100 on IMDb are from after this film was released. Literally, every single one is after the year 2000. and it's for multiple reasons. Joint Security Area is a time capsule look at the biggest Korean film figures of the last 25 years. The main character is one of the biggest Korean actors in the world today because of the success of Squid Game, and the other main lead is the biggest Korean actor in general with Song Kang-ho. I almost forgot to add this in the video, but this is the reason that Bong Joon-ho casted Song Kang-ho in Memories of Murder. He had started to get a little buzz, but this movie came out 3 years before those two met and started working together. And I saw an interview where Bong Joon-ho said he didn't even audition him for Memories of Murder, he just saw Joint Security Area and knew he was ready. So without this movie, we don't get Song Kang-ho in The Host or Parasite, which honestly, those movies still could have came out, Bong Joon-ho still probably would have written them, but they would not be the same without his most frequent and best collaborator, Song Kang-ho. I'm telling you, dude, this movie is extremely important. And then of course you have the director himself, who we will talk more about in a second. But when you look at all the major Korean films released after, almost all of them have one of these players involved. Lady Vengeance, I Saw the Devil, Thirst, every Bong Joon-ho and Park Chan-wook classic. Then with TV with Squid Game, The Auditors, and Daejang-jeom, which is a show that has inspired a lot of modern K-dramas which are sweeping the internet the last few years. The South Korean film industry is a very tight-knit community, and a lot of the faces and influences came from this movie in this time period. And then we have the influence on filmmaking itself, which I'm sure you've noticed as I went over the movie. Genre blending, heavy emphasis on messaging, critiquing the government and politics. A lot of Korean movies I've seen do a lot of interesting and unique scene transitions, and Joint Security Area is filled with them. And then the dark humor, especially the dark humor. These are all staples in South Korean film. Now, I'm not saying this film invented these things, I'm just saying it was one of the first of this era and the first to break out into the mainstream. With all the success that it had, one could only assume that other filmmakers felt more comfortable trying things like this. It allowed for ideas so taboo and controversial to be used as powerful statements that created beautiful works of art. By making people think more critically and have a new perspective, they started questioning more. And this in turn creates new critiques and conversations through film, which have since made South Korean film one of the most potent and important when it comes to starting a dialogue. A lot of these South Korean movies from this era are very prophetic. I talked about this a lot in the Save the Green Planet video, but these 20-plus-year-old films could not be more relevant to today. But if we are talking about the influence of Joint Security Area, we have to talk about Park Chan-wook, the director. This film is the reason he went on to create all of his groundbreaking films. Without the success that it had, he would have quit altogether. And his next film, 3 years later, is the most important when it comes to the reason we're talking about this film in the first place. That, of course, being Oldboy. This film damn near single-handedly brought South Korean cinema over to the mecca of movies, Hollywood. Like I had said before, this was a lot of modern Americans' first experience with Korean film, and this started their journey into finding more inspiring movies. Now, Joint Security Area does have some American film influence in it, but after Oldboy released, these two works, along with the works of Bong Joon-ho, started influencing American and European directors. Oldboy, in a way, created this bridge, and ever since, we have seen more and more art that is directly inspired by South Korea. Quentin Tarantino named Joint Security Area as one of his 20 favorite movies in the last 35 years. Ari Aster and Yorgos Lanthimos are remaking Save the Green Planet. Spike Lee tried to remake Oldboy in 2013, but you can't really recreate that movie, but it just goes to show how some of the biggest American directors are directly influenced by this era of South Korean film. I mean, the biggest trope in American movies today is that they're all about eating the rich and anti-capitalism. And this just so happens to be after Parasite and Squid Game, two titles that went all in on these same topics and captivated the world that came out just a couple years prior to this new trend. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's a coincidence. There are just so many ways you can tie South Korean cinema's influence into today's film industry. Whether that be Bong Joon-ho, Squid Game, Oldboy, Korean horror, K-dramas, K-pop, their influence is all over the world. But all of it seems to go back to this film, Joint Security Area. It set the standard for what Korean movies could be. It changed the way people interacted with film. It proved the power that movies could have, and it allowed for one of the country's most impactful directors to not only continue his work, but to bridge the gap to Korean cinema. So when you see another genre-blending film, another critique of the elites, any other fantastic Korean film, and it comes out of this modern era, you have South Korea's most important movie, Joint Security Area, as one of the founding fathers to thank for it. Honestly, this might sound ridiculous, but I think it's the South Korean version of a Citizen Kane or Casablanca. It really is the most important and influential South Korean movie of all time. So go watch this movie if you haven't already, and I promise you, you will not only enjoy it, but it will feel like you're witnessing history.